So we'll kind of start more with, the crossroads in terms of your journey. So, all right, so right now, as of today, it's June 2022. When did you begin to question your faith?
You know, really that is really a more nuanced kind of question or answer, because when I actually made the decision to really start diving deep and trying to prove to myself what I believe, I can look back now on the different red flags that I had leading up to that point that I just dismissed, which a lot of people I think do, are kind of trained to do that. And so it really brings me to, I would say, October, November of 2018. My husband had already left, and I wasn't going to change, stubborn and dug my heels in the ground. But really what I was doing was I was taking time for myself to think about what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I was telling my family I was staying. I was telling my husband I was staying. So we were, like I said, at a crossroads. So what then that allowed me to do is I started just trying to do research and prove to myself that this is what I believe. And so then I can go tell Aaron, no, here's things I have found that I believe supports my beliefs. Mm-hmm. And why maybe try to change his mind, but at least support what I was believing.
So at that time, you weren't necessarily questioning your faith. You were trying to find research to support your faith.
Yes, I was, because so this was a very big, serious decision. And so he had mentioned things throughout that he had found that basically made him question his beliefs, and he did his own research, and I was trying to then go find things to prove him wrong. Mm-hmm. And the problem was I couldn't, and that was very concerning for me.
You couldn't find things to support your faith in
Right.
the research you were doing.
Right, and that was within the literature. If I really, looked deep into it, that was, going inside the witness literature, because we were instructed to not go outside of, looking at the witness literature. And so I tried to listen and do it that way.
So you were reading censored literature within the organization.
Yes.
What you were allowed or permitted to research.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So after, once I was finding things that didn't really support what I had been taught, I decided to go outside the literature. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I looked at was actually a video on YouTube of a mother married to her husband they had 2 boys, and that as they were raising their sons, they couldn't find supportive answers to the questions their kids were having, and trying to explain it to them and have them follow these beliefs. And I know for my husband and myself, we were both faced with those kinds of things, because maybe the answers we got growing up didn't really add up, or, even if it was shown that it didn't make sense sometimes.
Okay.
Or feel fair.
Yeah. And as you were uncovering more, I guess, more or less holes mm-hmm. in this belief system, you were finding more and more holes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I couldn't find enough supporting beliefs or supporting material to support my beliefs in the witnesses, that it was allowing me to step outside mm-hmm. to try to then figure out, okay, what am I missing? Because that's how I felt when Aaron, my husband, was leaving, and he was mentioning things that he was finding, and I dismissed it. But I mean, he's he's a smart person. And I was like, what am I missing? What am I not putting together?
As you're about to change your family, change the structure of your family,
Right.
and your lifestyle and your way of living since you were born.
Right. And that's a huge thing to completely shift out of I had the potential of losing my my whole family, all the friends that I grew up with and that I had made even as an adult. So, it's a very challenging, it's a really hard decision. It's a really not one that I took very lightly at all.
At all.
No.
Right.
It's changing my entire world and my whole belief system. And so...
And you mentioned something earlier. One of the first things that you researched or saw outside of the censored content was this YouTube video of a mother. And I just wonder, you were in the organization at that moment.
Right.
And you're watching someone who has exited and made that shift. What was that like? Just being like, thinking about it now you're the woman on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, and so that was actually because the way she presented herself was so balanced and so just, I did my research. This is not because I'm upset with anyone. This is just, I did my research, things didn't add up, and now I can't teach this to my kids. And so because it affects your life so greatly that these, the belief system that we have, it affects your everyday life, it affects your thinking, it affects your choices and your decisions. So, I mean, this has a huge impact on someone's life. Our girls are doing great. They had an easier time transitioning than I would have anticipated, probably because they were still young.
Right.
But they've definitely transitioned well out of it. Even though my husband left before I did, we were on the same path, but just in different spots at the times when we were leaving. So, it was nice to have that support in him, but yet he was in a different spot than I was in.
And being adults, you also had the burden of talking to your family and having these conversations, or just having any kind of break and disaffiliation. How did that go?
With talking with our parents about our new chapter or new... So for me, I kind of put that off as long as I could possibly put that off, because even though I was okay with the choices and the decisions I was making, because, I really made that choice for myself. It wasn't for anyone else. I was okay with that, but I was just very hard for me to have those uncomfortable conversations. I was hoping to just try to fade into the darkness and, go that way, go easy, but...
Right. Path of least resistance.
Right. So, but when I decided to come out with those videos, those YouTube videos that I already came out with about my brother, that was really when that conversation kind of just ripped a Band-Aid off, and they really saw that I was truly leaving, not just fading, and it really hurt them a lot. A lot of disapproval, a lot of just really upset with me and didn't understand, and I can imagine, and from their standpoint, that they don't understand that. I can put my head around that because I kind of was in that position, but I took that time for myself to try to prove it and try to, make sure this is what I believe, because it's such, like I said, a huge impact on your life. that, and this is something I'm teaching my kids, that I better sure be clear that I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that my parents would do the same thing or look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. And be able to see it from your side,
right,
as you've seen it from their side.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know there's the experience of being shunned and just a separation from the church. How did that go for you? I think we've talked about it before, and I remember you describing it as while you're isolated, you were also able to use it as a time for healing for yourself.
So, when I came out with videos, that was really the transition with my parents and my family and all my friends.
No small thing.
No, not at all. And, it's one thing to think about it and know that that's what's going to be coming or potentially going to be happening to you, but to experience it, it's very different than just the knowledge of knowing that it's going to happen.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you can't get through it. It doesn't mean that there's not light at the end of the tunnel, but it's very hard. And losing your family and your friends and the structure of all of that, especially at any age, is really difficult. I was actually telling my mother, I said, it's like me being abandoned at 42 years old by both of my parents at the same time, and yet they're still alive.
And by their choice.
Yes, it was by their choice. Because I have definitely let them know I do not want that. So, before those videos came out, I did call a few of my friends and talk to them. They didn't know that the videos were coming, but that was me trying just to kind of say goodbye without them knowing I was saying goodbye, because I knew that they had a choice that they're going to make. And then with my parents, it just, it really changed our dynamic, and the conversations really started to dwindle after the first video came out.
Okay.
Back in January of 2021. And then the second video came out in September of 2021, and that was really when the complete, shunning started from most of my family.
Right. And so that's about less than a year ago.
Yes.
Today.
Yes. So that was, even though there was a process of leaving, and I had left before these videos came out, the work on myself started last fall. I mean, I'd done work prior, but
right.
The really hard.
And what was the really hard part?
I think for me it triggered some new emotions or new things that I didn't even know were there, or maybe they weren't there, and it's created that. Some abandonment issues, definitely loss and grief. So grieving people that are still alive. And it was a really hard process, and learning how for me to heal those things for me, for not trying to rely on someone else to fix it or make it better. I knew when that second video, that documentary came out in September, my parents, it cut off quickly.
It's a hard line.
It was a very hard line. And, I wanted to write them this letter of my emotions and everything I was feeling and thinking, and how I couldn't believe that they were doing this and all of these things. But, as okay as sending that letter would have been, and that it was been a fair letter.
Right.
For me, I really thought about it and chose not to send it, because for me, I was trying to trigger them. I was trying to get a response out of them. I was trying to help them or have them feel a need or a void that I was having that they're not going to fill right now. And I needed to fix that for myself.
And it's such a significant level of awareness for yourself to recognize. You're saying, oh, I want to write this letter. I want to reach out to them. It's natural. It's instinctual to maintain that relationship with your parents, even when there's been differences of opinion.
Right. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Right. And so for you to stop and say, okay, in this process of recovery, because that's what it is, you were able to say, okay, I have this instinct to send this letter to reach out to them, but at the same time I recognize that that's actually not serving me in my own healing journey.
Right. And so I didn't do that, figuring that all out by myself. I was going to therapy at the time. As this video came out, I wasn't going to therapy for leaving the witnesses. I was actually going to therapy for a car accident I had, and I had some PTSD from that. And so I was doing a therapy called EMDR. And for me, that was trying to help me kind of get rid or put in place the PTSD. Well, what it did more so is uncover really the source of where that PTSD kind of came from for me. And it rooted on, just as we all have childhood challenges, and, it unrooted all of that sort of stuff to kind of see where maybe some of how I felt and traits that I picked up, how that came from, from being a kid, and how I responded to things. And so I had help with that.
Right. Yes, you had this source of support in your disaffiliation from the Jehovah's Witness organization.
Yes. But
you were really going in for just recovery from anxiety and PTSD from a car accident.
Yes.
And lo and behold,
it uncovers a whole can of worms.
So yeah, what kind of a pleasant surprise tucked in there.
It was actually. I was really nervous to do it, but it was a really pleasant surprise to kind of heal those pieces of me that I don't think I knew was even there, and that I'm still working on. I think it's always a work in progress. I think right when you think you're healed or better, more things, uncover, and you're like, oh, okay.
There's another piece to this.
There is.
So you had some support from therapy in this process. What have been other sources of support for you? And how important are those sources?
So kind of when I was fading before my videos came out, I had already started establishing friends outside the organization because that wasn't something we were allowed to do. Growing up, you're not supposed to associate with anyone outside the Jehovah's Witness organization. And it helps you, rely on one another in the organization, and it helps keep that tight-knit group and no outside influences.
High control.
Very. And so I think establishing friends before kind of being more outspoken about it was important for me because I needed support. I felt like I'd been isolated, and so I needed friends. And so I had established some friends, and friends that already kind of knew my journey and my experience and knew I had left. And so it was really helpful to have established some friends prior to kind of making the big, step of being very honest with everyone.
Okay, yeah. So you had this like net of friendship to help you get through this process. Is that more intuitive? Did you say to yourself, I need to make friends, I need this in my life? Or did you just naturally gravitate towards forming friendships?
So I think it was both natural and knowing I need to make friends, because I had already moved from Indiana to Colorado. So I hadn't really established a lot of Jehovah's Witness friends here. And I needed friends in general. So part of it was intuitive because I was needing that friendship. And part of it was just knowing I needed the friendship. I mean, it was naturally,
a human need.
Yeah, it was just a human need.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had the support of my husband. I had the support of my kids. I have an aunt that is supportive. So that has, you know, that has been helpful. And there have been friends that I've known in the past that used to be Jehovah's Witnesses that have reached out to me in support.
Okay.
So
they've reached out in support for you.
Yes, they have since left, you know,
Okay.
maybe left prior to me leaving.
Okay.
But they have also reached out. So it was just in general having just supportive people that were encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the videos came out and I saw the support with just the community that was watching the videos, that was actually quite supportive and encouraged me, because last year was very difficult because it was a lot of loss for me last year.
Yes. Yes, and I know you continue to have conversations with people that are still in the organization, and those are very emotional and kind of burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
How do you protect yourself? How do you take care of Brandy, as you're having these conversations?
So I have had to learn to create boundaries for myself. That's not something that was really easy with me before. That's just not a trait that came easy. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn to put some boundaries up. I've had some people that are from my past that still want to reach out and have wanted to maybe resume contact with me. My mom contacted and reached out to me, and she wanted to talk about having a relationship again. Mm-hmm. And I got that phone call, and part of me was happy, part of me was scared, because I had done so much work up to that point and kind of healing that loss, mm-hmm. that I didn't want to put myself back in that position of just kind of opening that wound again. So she's like, let me think about it. And so she thought about it, and she, gave me a call back, and she then discovered that she wanted to have a relationship, but she discovered that I, made a choice to not come back. That was my choice. I wasn't coming back. So then with that knowledge, she decided to not resume contact. Mm-hmm. And so I think without having that boundary there and that honesty that I had to have with her, mm-hmm. Ultimately, as much as maybe that stung again that day, I recovered from that pretty quickly, like mm-hmm. within a day or two. I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't still bother me, but, it was, I had to put that boundary there, mm-hmm. because I have to protect my feelings, and it doesn't mean I don't love her or my dad. I do love them both very much, but I can't participate in a very one-sided relationship mm-hmm. that way.
And so the boundary you set up took the form of being honest about your life direction now. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so you attribute this being able to kind of, what's that term? Where you like weathering the storm? Yes. To this being completely open and honest about what you want. Yes, and that took a long time. It was in stages for me. So
it was hopefully just fading away. And then I came out with a video, so then that didn't really happen. That was my choice, but, and I'm happy with that choice. But it definitely had to go in stages for me. It was a fading away at first. And then I was ready to be a little bit more forthcoming and honest. And then, then again faced with the potential of being able to have my mother back in my life. It's not fair to her to not be completely honest. It's not fair to me to try to, swish under the rug everything. So I had to keep those boundaries for me.
Right. And as you talk about this, I can sense that there's still a love there for your parents, and trying to approach them with kindness and with respect and being conscientious. But at the same time, it's almost like, that you've gone through this experience of being abandoned. It's like now you have to parent yourself.
Yes.
And protect yourself.
And, now that I've personally gone through that, the abandonment, the shunning, it is much clearer to me how important it is to not do or participate in the shunning, how very hurtful, and how it affects someone's mental health dramatically. And I find myself a fairly strong person, but it was very hard. It did a number. It really, really did.
It can be very damaging.
Yes, it can be very damaging. It is very, it not can be, it is very damaging. And so, when I came out with the video about my brother and the shunning, it was coming from a very different perspective. Now that I've experienced it myself, I'm definitely happy that I'm not participating in that anymore.
Had you participated in that before?
So I originally shunned my brother.
Okay.
Once he was disfellowshipped. So I take ownership in what I contributed to that. And, I hate that I did that, but, there's nothing I can do to change what I did. I fortunately got to have a relationship with him before he died. But what I realized, what I can change is how I change for my future and how moving forward, what I can do different.
And it sounds like you had some grace for yourself in understanding that at that time you were a good Jehovah's Witness follower.
I tried to be.
Right, and you were living up to those standards. But yet how beautiful it is that you were able to enjoy your brother.
Yeah, that would have been very regretful, more so than I already was. And that, that was a piece that I had to work on myself after he died. And, as those stages of grief that you go through.
Right. All right, Brandy, so it's been 4 years, essentially, since you were starting to question your faith, and you've been through so much since then. What are you currently facing right now in terms of freedoms or struggles?
So for me, what I will probably struggle with is just the loss of my family. That's probably the biggest struggle. The one thing that I have enjoyed was now allowing myself the freedom to figure out what it is I believe, and I'm still figuring that out. So that was kind of a relief for me to now I have that freedom to think and decide for myself what that looks like. So, those are kind of the two things that come off the top of my head. The struggle, obviously, with the loss of everyone, but then being able to choose for myself what I get to believe. And then kind of figuring out who I am all over again. And not that still that Brandy that everyone already knew isn't still there, but kind of tweaking that a little bit and kind of chilling out and relaxing and
what's been most surprising to you about like the Brandy that you're uncovering and meeting?
That I'm a little bit more free-spirited, and I definitely think I've chilled out some. That's kind of the sentiment that I've heard. The people that knew me right before and now know me after.
So before this transformation, you were not chilled out.
Not so much.
a little high strung.
I was a little wound kind of tight. So, I like it better. I feel I'm happier. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot happier.
Mm-hmm. And how does that impact your children, your family?
I think they notice it. I mean, I know my daughters have noticed it. I know my husband's noticed the change, and I think it's been positive. I think it allows my girls to see that you can think for yourself. You can, if something doesn't seem right or doesn't feel right, you can research and make your own mind up about decisions and things in your life that can really change your life.
Mm-hmm.
So having that ability to be able to think for themselves and make their own decisions is kind of, I'm happy that I get to kind of employ that or help them see that that's okay.
Mm-hmm. And what I hear in that is really like women's empowerment.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just being a good example, I think, for them, the best that I can be, and hopefully they can see that.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. And there's so much that you've shared just in this short amount of time. And you say it so, like, you're very articulate and you say it so effortlessly. But I think it needs to be said that what you've gone through is a huge undertaking. I mean, you've gone through the fire to get here.
It is not. I know. So I don't want to mislead anyone and have them think that this is easy and it's easy breezy, and it's really hard, and it's a big decision to kind of go through that journey and know that you're losing things and things that are very important to you, and and how it really can affect someone's mental health, and how it just the roller coaster of emotions that you're going to go through. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are good things. There are a lot of positive things along the road that can happen. A lot of recognizing, like I was saying, the new person that you're becoming, and being able to differentiate your thoughts from what you were taught and to believe versus new information, or allowing new information to come in. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of adjusting your thought pattern. Then you have you get to discover yourself, and it can kind of be fun. It can be very scary. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know who that person may be.
And that's what makes it the roller coaster. Is that it's scary and fun at the same time.
But there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of good things to be happy about.
Mm-hmm.